Good afternoon to everyone. We are the Group 10 and the topic we are going to discuss is the development of endocrine system. So, endocrine system, it consists of glands and these glands secretes their own hormones. So these glands are scattered throughout the body. We all know that these glands are magkakahiwalay. Meron sa may brain, meron sa may chest, and meron din sa abdominal part of the body. So, they have similar function, similar mechanism, and influence dahil ang general function ng ating glands ay to regulate different biological processes in the body. So, endocrine glands, we have 8 major endocrine glands. We have the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, the thyroid and parathyroid, the thymus, the adrenal gland, the pancreas, and lastly the gonads, the ovary in female, and testes in male. So, ang function ng endocrine glands is to produce and regulate these chemical substances which we call the hormones. So, hormones act only on a certain kind of tissue called its target tissue. So, in this illustration, we can see that each glands have secreting cells. So, yung secreting cells, siya yung nagpo-produce ng hormones, and these hormones will transported directly to the bloodstream papunta dun sa target cells. So, hindi siya pwedeng pumunta dun sa target cells dahil walang receptor dun. So, only dun sa target cell lang ang pupuntahan ng hormones na to. So, ang function ng hormones is to regulate growth, development, mood, tissue function, metabolism, and sexual function. So, the first gland we will discuss is the pituitary gland. Ang pituitary gland is also known as the master glands. Master gland siya because it signals other endocrine glands to stimulate their own hormones para yung mga glands na to ay makasecrete sila ng normal amount of hormones na kailangan ng katawan. So, pituitary gland is about 1 cm in diameter or a pea-size. So, sobrang liit lang nito. And it is connected to the hypothalamus of the brain. So, may dalawang distinct region itong gland na ito. We have the anterior lobe and the posterior lobe. So, punta naman tayo sa development. So, pituitary gland begins to develop by the 7th week of gestation or the embryonic development. So, yung anterior pituitary, it derived from the oral ectoderm. Early in gestation, a finger of ectodermal grows upward from the roof of the mouth and it will develop into anterior pituitary or adenohypophysis. So, dun sa posterior pituitary, na-derive siya from the neural ectoderm. Another finger of ectodermal tissue evaginates ventrally from the diencephalon of the ventral brain will become the posterior pituitary. So, later, these two tissues will grow into one another and become tightly opposed. So, ito yung illustration ng development. So, we know that it arises from two ectodermal tissue. Ang anterior is from the oral ectoderm and the posterior is from the neuroectoderm. So, from the 7th week of development, an ectodermal oral upgrowth of osteoderm immediately in front of the rachis pouch dito sa may first image. So, dito dun sa diencephalon of the brain, nagkakaroon ng downward extension which we call the infundibulum. So, dun sa second image, early in the 8th week, yung rachis pouch will appear and nag-evaginate siya and subsequently grows dorsally toward the infundibulum. And next, dun sa third image, by the end of the 8th week, it will lose its connection with the oral cavity and magkakaroon siya ng close contact dito sa infundibulum. So, yung red na part is the anterior pituitary and yung gray is the posterior. So, from there, nag-fuse na sila together or nag-bind sila to become mature pituitary gland. So, next is the hormones of the anterior lobe. So, yun nga, yung dalawang distinct region ng ating pituitary glands ay magkaiba sila ng function and magkaiba din sila ng hormones na sinisecrete sa ating katawan. So, dun sa anterior lobe, we have 4 hormones. First one is the thyroid stimulating hormones or the thyrotrophin. It stimulates the thyroid to produce thyroxine. So, next is the adrenocorticotrophic hormone. Ang receptor site niya is dun sa adrenal glands. Ito yung nagsisignal dun sa adrenal gland to secrete, to stimulate the secretion of cortical hormones. And next is the gonadotrophic hormones. Ang receptor site niya is dun sa ovaries and testes to regulate the development, growth, and function of these organs. So, last is the prolactin. Ito yung nagpo-promotes dun sa glandular tissue in the female breast during pregnancy and to stimulate the milk production after birth. So, yung hormones sa posterior lobe, we have 2. The antidiuretic hormones. Ito yung nag-i-stimulate dun sa reabsorption of water by the renal tubules. So, next is the oxytocin. Ito naman yung nag-i-stimulate dun sa uterus to contract during labor, delivery, and parturition. Here are some abnormalities na related sa pituitary glands. Kapag over-secretion ng growth hormones, nagkakaroon ng giantism and acromegaly. Acromegaly is yung nagkakaroon ng enlargement ng bones sa may face, hands, and sa paa. And kapag under secretion, kulang ng growth hormone, nagkakaroon ng dwarfism. So, the next glands is the pineal. A pine cone shape and only about 1 cm in diameter. It consists of portions of neurons, neuroglial cells, and pinealocytes. So, ang development niya is around 7 to 8 weeks of gestation. So, a dorsal diverticulum, an outpacketing of the diencephalon, initiates the formation of pineal glands during the 10th week of development. So, the wall of vesicular evagination thickens. The lumen is occluded except at the base of the outpacketing, where the pineal recess persists and communicates with the third ventricle in the adult. The pineal glands becomes a compact structure containing 2 cell types. We have the pinealocytes and the glial-like interstitial cells. So, dito, ito yung illustration ng development ng pineal gland. So, from the first image, the development of pineal gland occurs from the diencephalon. So, dun sa dorsal part niya, nagkakaroon ng diverticulum ng tissue or yung outpacketing of the ectodermal cells. So, from the second image, in this point, nagkakaroon ng cavity that is connected to the third ventricle of the brain and nagkakaroon ng developing parenchyma and dun na nag-i-start yung nagkakaroon ng tubules. that is separated by the connective tissue. So, yung pineal recess dito nag-elongates and nagkakaroon ng tubules. So, dun sa third image naman, ito na yung end of the 8 weeks. Yung connective tissue will bind together to make the structure of the pineal to become compact. So, nagiging mature na yung pineal dyan. So, next, ang hormones naman ng pineal are serotonin and melatonin. Ang serotonin ay isang neurotransmitter that regulates intestinal movements and affect appetite, mood, sleep, anger, and metabolism. And next is the melatonin. It affects reproductive development and daily physiologic cycle. So, ito yung responsible dun sa sleep and wake pattern ng katawan natin. Yung pagtulog hanggang sa paggising natin sa umaga. Or we could call it the circadian cycle. So, next gland is the thyroid gland. So, it is a butterfly-shaped organ. It is located in the neck. And ang hormone na sinisikret niya is the thyroxine. So, the thyroxine is the body's first endocrine glands to develop around 3rd week of gestation. So, ito yung pinakaunang gland, endocrine gland na develop. So, the thyroid arises from first and second pharyngeal pouches, which composed of endodermal cells. So, its development begins as the diverticular outgrowth from the pharynx, and this diverticulum then descends inferiorly to reach its final destination in the neck. So, from the first image sa 4th week, yung endodermal cells of primitive pharynx nagpa-proliferate or nagkakaroon ng rapid production of cell para mabuo yung diverticulum. So, dun sa early 5th week, dito naman, yung diverticulum will migrate to the midline, pero connected pa rin siya dun sa foramen cecum. And next, dun sa late 5th week, nagkakaroon ng elongation ng thyroglossal duct para ma-migrate yung thyroid gland doon sa may trachea. So, dun sa 7th week, this is the last one, kapag na-reach niya na yung thyroid gland, yung tracheal ring, yung thyroid gland, kapag na-reach niya na yung tracheal ring, yung thyroglossal duct will break down and eventually degenerates. So, ang final position ng thyroid gland is below the larynx, and it is located on the tracheal ring. Next is yung function. So, thyroid, it is regulate the rates of metabolism in the body, and it is essential for normal physical and mental development. So, here are some abnormalities sa may thyroid. Kapag oversecretion ng thyroxine, nagkakaroon ng nervousness and weight loss. Kapag kulang ng thyroxine, it will result to cretinism. It is a mental retardation in children. And yung physical appearance nila is usually puffy face and dilated yung tang nila. And sobrang liit din and they are small size din pala. Next is goiter. Ito naman kapag nagkaroon ng iodine deficiency, nag-enlarge yung thyroid glands. Okay, so the next glands or the fourth gland is the parathyroid. It is located in the back of the thyroid gland. In the hormones it secreted is the parathormone. So the development begins on the 5th to 12 weeks of gestation. So yung superior parathyroid glands develop from the fourth pharyngeal pouch, and the inferior parathyroid develops from the third pharyngeal pouch. So we have 4 parathyroid, dalawang superior parathyroid and dalawang inferior parathyroid. So yung superior parathyroid, it develops from the endodermal cells in the pharyngeal pouch, and it will give rise to the parathyroid diverticulum. So ganon din sa inferior parathyroid, na-develop siya dun sa endodermal cells in the third pharyngeal pouch, and nagkakaroon ng diverticulum dun. And after that, dun sa 7 weeks, nasa-separate siya dun sa pharyngeal walls, and ma-attach siya dun sa posterior surface of the thyroid, which is yun na yung final position nila. So next, function of the parathyroid gland. It is to control metabolism of calcium, and it is necessary for the normal nerve and muscle function, blood clotting, healthy bones, and teeth. So here are some abnormalities kapag under secretion ng or kulang ng parathormone ang katawan. It will result in nerve disorder, brittle bones, and clotting problems.
Adrenal glands. During 6 weeks of development, the coelomic epithelium medial to the developing gonadal ridge refers. The newly formed cells get separated from the surface epithelium, enter the underlying mesoderm, and form a fetal cortex. Second wave of delaminating cells migrates and form a thinner, definitive or permanent cortex surrounded a fetal cortex. Adrenal glands. It is located at the top of the kidney, which release 2 types of hormones, cortisone and adrenal. So what is the function of cortisol? It is to regulate carbohydrates, protein, and fat metabolism. It promotes conversion of fats and protein to glucose. Function of adrenaline: to rise blood sugar levels and increase heartbeat and breathing rate. These are some abnormalities of adrenal. Hyposecretion, it results to Addison's disease, which is seen in the left side, and hypersecretion results in disease, which is seen in the right side. Pancreas. Pancreas first appeared at approximately 5 weeks of gestation as the 2 outpouching in the duodenum just distal to the forming stoma. Ventral pancreas. It develops from the proximal end of the hepatic diverticulum, forms in the liver and gallbladder. Dorsal pancreas arise from the dorsal wall of the duodenum. Later, these 2 buds fuse together in the dorsal mesentery. These which is in the ventral pancreas and the dorsal pancreas, its rotation, and then at the 8 weeks, their fusion. Pancreas. It is a long, soft organ that lies on the posterior wall of the stomach. The pancreatic islets secretes glucagon and insulin. So, what is insulin? Insulin stimulates glucose uptake by cells and maintenance of normal blood sugar levels. Glucagon promotes conversion of glycogen, animal-based carbohydrates, to glucose. These are some abnormalities of pancreas. Hyperglycemia. A high blood glucose is lower than normal blood sugar. Too little insulin. Symptoms: headache, thirsty, frequent urination, hot, dry skin. Hypoglycemia. A low blood sugar is lower than normal blood sugar. Excessive insulin. These are the symptoms: dizziness, unceasing hunger, irritability, clammy skin. Thymus. Thymus developed during the 6th week of gestation. Thymic epithelium from the ventral diverticular epithelium of the third pharyngeal pouch along the thyroid and parathyroid glands. During the seventh week of thymic primordia elongate and become cylindrical, forming thymopharyngeal ducts. It migrates caudally and medially to their final destination in the anterior mediastinum. This is the thymus. Thymus is located in the chest between the lungs and behind the breastbone. It produces white blood cells, T lymphocytes, and secretes thymosin. So, what is the function of thymosin? It plays an important role in the development of the body immune system. It regulates immune cell production. Testes and ovary. Ovarian and testes develop begins by at 3 weeks of development. The germ cell migrates from the yolk sac to the genital ridge under the influence of human chorionic gonadotropin, and Leydig cells of the developing testes begin to secrete testosterone. Second development. It's at about 9 weeks of development, the labioscrotal swelling fuse to form the scrotum. Testosterone also induces development of the mesonephric duct to form epididymis, vas deferens, and seminal vesicle. During this stage of development, the testis moves from the genital ridge across the pelvis to lie at the internal inguinal ring. The processus vaginalis appears at about 13 weeks of development as an outpouching of the parietal peritoneum. This development tunnel moves media and caudal between the internal and external abdominal oblique muscle and into the scrotum. Ovary. It is a female reproductive organ responsible for producing egg cells, and it secretes estrogen and progesterone. So the function of estrogen is to development of breast, distribution of fat evidences in the legs, hips, and breasts, maturation of reproductive organs such as uterus and vagina. Function of progesterone causes to uterine lining to thicken in preparation for pregnancy, regulating the monthly menstrual cycle. Testis, it secretes androgen and testosterone. So, what is the function of androgen? It is responsible for the development of secondary sexual characteristics in men. For example, facial and body hair growth and voice changes. And second function affects bone and muscles development and metabolism. Function of testosterone. It regulates sex drive, increases bone mass and strength, and fat distribution. Produces sperm cells.